Hey everyone, welcome back to Nifilmism. I'm Ryan.
I'm Drew.
Been a while.
Yeah, we're not dead yet.
Couple weeks.
Unfortunately.
Not a couple weeks or dead. No, a couple weeks since we've recorded anything.
Can't wait.
It's been busy. We're gonna talk about Westworld today.
Yeah, I mean we're every. I think they
We're
do
6
12.
in.
They do 12 a season or
10.
13? 10.
I
So
thought
we're
it was
more than
10.
halfway. Okay.
But we're gonna call this the halfway point
Yeah.
because if we're being honest, this felt more like a
like
mid-season.
like I had said when I was like, "Oh, have you caught up?" This feels like, hey, some of the stuff that drove the first part of the season.
Yeah, if
We're closing off what isn't going to be relevant to the overarching plot.
if they were going to if they were going to do a mid-season finale for this show, this would have been the episode to do it with.
Yeah.
Before we get into that, though, breaking news in the movie world: Spawn has officially received its star.
Really?
Did you catch this?
No.
Jamie Foxx is going to
Oh,
play
really?
Spawn, and apparently now it's supposed to be a trilogy.
Oh. Of
Which
course, because we have to option an entire franchise before we even see if we can do one quality movie.
And that's disappointing, given the script that I had heard about that McFarlane's been working on for a few years. Doesn't really work well if you're already planning a trilogy around it.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see what happens. Could be shit. Could be good. Could be the Dark Tower level bad. who the fuck
at
knows?
this point.
What else is going on in the world of movies? I mean, I saw Solo. You didn't.
I'm going to at some point.
Neither of us have seen Deadpool yet.
I could do a twofer. And go see Solo, and then we could go see a different one. I mean, I wouldn't be able to use Movie Pass twice, but yeah, I could go just to catch up because I feel like that needs to be an episode because I hear everybody, people who are like enthusiastic are just like of the franchise are like, yeah, it's like I got a new throw rug, like it's that level of excitement.
Yeah, that'll be an upcoming episode. This is actually going to be a 2-part episode. Part 2 is not going to come out for a little while. What I want to do is, at the end of the season, go back, do a season review, and maybe even make that a 2-parter and talk about just AI in general.
I don't think we've even touched on season 1, so we got to cover that a bit here.
Do we need to?
Briefly, just
Sure.
a preface.
Then I'll let you kick it off.
I loved season 1 and season 2. Season 2, it's tug of war. I feel like at certain points it seems too simple, and then at certain points I feel like Westworld's the O show, opaque, obfuscate, and I can't think of another one. But I feel like they try to hide simple plot threads behind trying to be clever this season, and I felt like it's a little bit less coherent.
I got a slightly different vibe. I got more, okay, we want to definitely drive home that there are mysteries and that we are going to keep going with the stuff we did in season 1 with tricking you a little bit, but now that you know that you're being tricked, we need to hide it a little more.
Yeah.
But I think that at some point towards the midpoint of the season when they were writing it, they realized, shit, we aren't giving the viewers anything. We're just giving them mysteries and not even enough clues to really put stuff together, and it's not quite as engaging because of that.
Yeah, I mean there is always the sense of wonder of establishing a world that you can never get once your sandbox is set up and now you're just playing in it. It's really hard to get that spark back unless you do have something really clever in store. But
I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
We're gonna immediately go into spoilers based on what it was super predictable. The end of this cliffhanger, the last episode, I felt like it just the problem I have is when your core audience is typically smarter to be watching the show and into the themes, so they're going to get stuff that's telegraphed even slightly early. And when you're just waiting for the anticipation of the confirmation there.
Yeah.
And you know it's going to be that, and you know it's not going to be swerved because, that's what everybody thinks it's going to be. It doesn't have the impact that I think was intended.
No, it felt almost like when they revealed that Jon Snow was the child of Rhaegar and Lyanna.
Yeah, it's one of those, all right, can we just get to...
what we already know is happening?
Can we get to the cinch of this thread, basically?
And move on to something that might actually be interesting.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those. It was clearly we need to set the stage by establishing that Ford is in the code at this point.
Let me back up though. I love this show.
I do, but like I said, there's certain times this season where I think this season more than anything has had me waffle on which plot I'm more interested in, which I guess is probably to its credit because near the end of season 1 Maeve's plot became almost unbearable in how overpowered she was, and it's veering that way again now, and I'm worried. But from the first 4 episodes, 4.5 of season 2, her plot trumped the Dolores's red army plot.
Dolores is still shit. Dolores, why would you spend a whole season of a show making your audience sympathetic towards a character to turn her into a mass murderer with no moral
And the only real seed for that was at the end of season 1 when they were like, oh yeah, Wyatt was always supposed to be one of her roles.
What was the point? Why would you?
I think it's just they wanted to establish she's the oldest host, so she's been subjected to the most torture.
Yeah, but
so they wanted that catharsis of, oh right, through most of season 2, she's just going to exact revenge, which as a burgeoning sapiens, the first things you're gonna learn are like being hurt and to be able to hurt.
And I guess pain. If you want to go a little bit darker with the themes, and it's doing its job.
Yeah.
That being said,
her plot seems so insular though, in that she really seems so much more selfish, which is hilarious because Maeve's whole plot is basically selfish, but in a way it's completely subverted that.
Are there any hosts that you actually feel sympathy for at this point?
At this point, host-wise?
Yeah.
Maybe the Japanese hosts. Just because they kind of feel like they're still like, we know, we have a gist of how crazy stuff is getting out there, but culturally, because that's what their archetype is, we're gonna stay here and just try to make the best of what we can. Other host wise, Teddy's the only sympathetic character at this point in the show, other than Bernard.
But then they go in and they mess around with his head.
But they did the right thing of having him still be aware that happened.
Okay.
Because throughout most of those past episode, I was like, okay, I dig this. Yeah, I know this is how I normally act, but I have no control over myself anymore.
And the Bernard, I do like Bernard, but then you've got the question of when you go and see the stuff that he's done with that stone cold killer face.
Yeah.
It kind of undermines, like, oh, okay, well, he could be a great character, but this is what's lurking underneath and bound to come back.
He feels like he's still the most in a program, too.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Before we even move on, and this is something I want to touch on with when we finally do our second episode talking about more AI, but a good friend of mine, she, right out of the gate this season, predicted that possibly the whole point behind some of the hosts was that they were used to put in a human consciousness, but then the maze was there to let them discover their hidden human consciousness, because they needed a back door, because just trying to ramrod a human consciousness into a robot wasn't working. So they needed to subtly put it in there, get them to learn, and then figure out who they actually were.
Yeah, it's the sense of you want them to. Most of season 1 was about that. The idea of you want them to choose to have to exercise a sense of agency on it. It's not the plop a rat in a maze. It's there's a maze, you can go into it. There might be something at the end of it. It's your choice, basically. And once you exert that choice.
But doing that as a back door to get their ultimate goal of immortality by having if your consciousness is hidden within the code of a robot, but it has to slowly be brought out by following this maze, that puts a whole new dynamic on what they're trying to do, and I really do think that that's where it's going.
Yeah.
But then it almost starts to feel like Altered Carbon.
Yeah.
Just finding a way to put your consciousness into a new vessel, which is something that it's been done in science fiction for basically as long as science fiction's been around.
Yeah.
So if nothing else, it's a neat new take.
I think the corporate plot line is more going to, by the end of the season, edge towards the future world plot line of we want to replace key figures in a way that we can control them, but they look the same to everybody else. They act the same to everybody else.
I kind of hope they don't do that with this because you already know that it happened in the previous version. And it's kind of like watching what's that fucking the movie with the murder mystery on the train, Murder on the Orient Express. Why would you remake a movie
if you're not going to change something of it?
Right, it had the same ending as the original. I don't need to watch that.
Yeah.
This you can start to do more, like as we've seen with 2049 and a couple of others. There's a lot more you can do examining human themes via AI.
On topic, but were you a bit disappointed that they didn't try to do the swerve of Charlotte Hale being a spy for another company too? What with how obvious it was that she was like, oh, there's one packet of super sensitive, all of the core data here that the company wants us to give before we can leave, and I'm like, this would be a great time to have her be like, oh yeah, I'm on the way out. I want to take the entire park IP is with me, but for the most part, they're just building Delos as your typical just corporate bastard company, which is
part OCP, part Umbrella.
Yeah, well, that seems to be completely staffed with either techs that are scared by stuff they see every day, or macho men characters that come out of like Commando.
So what you're saying is maybe some of these characters aren't as fleshed out as they,
especially the human characters. Yeah.
Ironically,
I'm gonna just come out and say what the fuck is William's plot at this point?
I don't know.
That's the thing I have a problem with, because he's the best acted character, the most interesting story, but he's the most hidden in terms of like what is the game? Why do you think you have to keep playing?
I was just going to say that because
I feel like it's admitting I'm an idiot, but I feel like this is where the O's come in, where it's just like, just because you're obfuscating what he wants to do doesn't mean it's like any deeper.
But it's Ed Harris, and I can just watch him act all day, and a lot.
He's as fun in this as he is in History of Violence.
I don't think anyone's ever called that a fun movie.
His performance in that movie is awesome.
Yeah,
he's almost as much of an asshole in this as he was in that.
And equally as creepy. I mean, one eye and that one scarred up in this one.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to do an episode on those two movies.
Just an Ed Harris retrospective.
No, not Ed Harris, but History of Violence and
one of the best comic adaptations ever.
Eastern Promises.
Verhoeven? Not Verhoeven. No, who is it?
That's Cronenberg.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because Vigo's worked with Cronenberg. Vigo hasn't done anything. Vigo needs to do something again. Not a Hidalgo something. Not a Disney obligation something.
Maybe he'll come back for the Lord of the Rings Amazon series.
Oh no.
I did christen my brand new 65-inch Samsung with the Lord of the Rings. Well, first I watched Mad Max, and then after I figured out the settings, I watched Lord of the Rings. So doubleheader.
But yeah, getting off track. Yes, he's the most compelling character, and is it because you don't know where he's going, or because he knows enough about what happens now, what's happening, that you just kind of want to follow him?
It's just fun to watch. Yeah. You can get through a lot on just that. On second or third viewings, you may look back and say, what the fuck were they thinking in the writing room?
I mean, right now, it kind of feels like the only thing he is he's like a gamer trying to break the game, trying to see like it almost feels like he's trying to get like select hosts and just like, you know what, I'll lead you out of here just because I want to see what's going to happen.
The other half of that, though, is go back to season 1. Look at his plot, and everything that he does, people think is part of Ford's master plan, but it can't be because he's got no control over the Man in Black.
Yeah.
And that's where it all falls apart. You've got a story that's supposed to be a master plan that revolves around a character that isn't being controlled.
Yeah.
Unless he was somehow, which would be...
No, if it... Is that the drop dead point? Is if they reveal that he's a host somehow?
Maybe? I don't know.
I would think
that,
so.
Is that the jump the shark moment?
I think that would be the huge jump the shark moment.
I haven't decided yet.
I think it would be.
Unless he's already dead, and put his consciousness into a host, and he's trying to wake it up like they are doing with everybody else.
Yeah.
But you could say that for anyone or anything. Just like in the Game of Thrones, anybody could technically be Jack and Hagar because he can change his face.
Yeah.
But at some point, you can't do everything based on that sort of, I don't want to say MacGuffin, but you know what I'm talking about.
Just more discussion about the Dolores plot. I think will pick up a bit now that there's going to be direct confrontation. But
okay.
I'm hoping for more. I guess Evan Rachel Wood said something like, granted, it's just the fluff that they say to keep you watching, but she said that like the back half of the season is really where it starts going a little off the rails crazy. So I hope for that. And usually that's an HBO staple. Is the last 3 episodes are the you can't miss type stuff.
But another HBO staple is, okay, we've got a show. It was successful. It's picking up a lot of steam. But now that we've got more viewers and we're putting more money into each episode in each season, at some point, at some point they need to make it more accessible for the average viewer. And they don't want to lose those people, which is why you end up with Jon Snow and certain other characters.
Yeah. I have it's can't be my own theory, but I like the theory of the show is really gonna pick up once they get the Game of Thrones money, once Game of Thrones is done, and HBO has no other show other than, hey, guess what? Westworld is literally the A show now. So all of that budget that we've been throwing into $10 million episodes for Game of Thrones can now be thrown into Westworld. So that may be where you get a lot of off the park island, wherever the hell it is, stuff start to happen if they're actually gonna liberate, and then you're gonna have a lot of off park stuff possibly. I think that's where the series might open up. But then again, Nolan and his wife have said we've only got a 5-year plan. We're not deviating from that. We have an end point. I'm like, good. Please add that into Western TV. We need stuff to not constantly be escalating to where stuff that was top tier in the first couple of seasons is now just absurd in how simple it is.
Off topic, but related to that, The Americans series finale is tomorrow night. And now that you can binge all of it, I implore you and the 3 people listening to this to do so. The Americans has been one of the best shows I've ever seen. And it was another one where they said, okay, we have a plan. We are going to a certain point. And that's it. We don't have much more to tell. And they've stuck to it. So kudos to them.
Yeah, finality needs to be a more present thing in long form American fiction.
Free Ronnie Gardaki.
Where's Ronnie? Just didn't make a series about Ronnie as he leaves prison.
He's never getting out.
No.
Jesus Christ. That cop killer. I mean, killed other cops, I should say.
He was an accessory. He did nothing.
We were supposed to go to Mexico.
Oh, man.
Nobody has any idea what we're talking about.
No, I'd like to think there are some people who watch The Shield. I gotta go back. I gotta go into the time machine. Let's talk about Westworld more.
Yeah.
The Maeve plotline has been the parabolic warble in this season where, hey, I really like where this is going, and oh no, she has superpowers.
It's getting to be a little much. It's almost like watching, at least in Stranger Things, 11 had limits. Like, she'd start to have nosebleeds and physically collapse from the strain of what she was doing. This is just walking around with God mode on.
Yeah. And at this point, based on the finale of this past episode, I think the only conflict she's going to have now are ethical ones. Because she can do anything in the parks now that she wants. And a lot of season 1 was built up to her cheating the code. So, they made this bed. It's a bed of nails. And it's uncomfortable when you literally just have her in situations of distress, just have everything around her kill each other.
But once she gets out of the park and that becomes a moot point, that could be interesting.
Yeah, or they could work in something where it's like, every time you do that, you're like literally burning out your light bulb brain. So
you could, maybe, I guess, I don't
know. Did anybody at all not think that the 3D printed marble was Ford? Because from the moment that you started seeing that flashback in that episode, that was the obvious answer. and I think it was super obvious.
It was super obvious, but how many are there
How many
of
copies?
those marbles?
Just the one in the
Are
cradle.
we sure?
Yeah, the one in the cradle. They're identical. They're identical when they're in the marble form.
Okay.
So I think the idea is, yeah, I'm just gonna have my little fuckboy Bernard, who does everything I tell him, have me 3D printed, kill anybody that was a part of that process, and then put me in the cradle where, hey, try to find the one marble that looks identical to every single marble of every character that is in the park as a host. I think it was a way. I think it was a way to assure his physical anonymity while allowing him to constantly upend any attempt to wrest control of the park.
Fair enough. But there has to be. He can't be the only one who's had his consciousness put into one of these.
Well, that's where you get to the pre intro stinger of what the fuck. How long has Dolores been aware and been conditioning
Bernard.
a Bernard?
I don't know. But that gets back to what we were talking about earlier. My
Yeah.
friend's theory. She seems right on that too, because
Yeah.
if Arnold is inside of Bernard, and she's been trying for all this time to get Bernard to come back, it, how many hosts have real live people buried
Embedded in
somewhere
them.
in them?
Yeah.
Is it one or two? Is it the whole park?
Yeah. I think that would be a bit much for the whole park.
Unless you've got a group of very wealthy investors looking for immortality, and the
Yeah.
way it was sold to them is, okay, we're going to put your consciousness into this, put it into a robot, and through a series of, say, traumas or trials,
Yeah, this
you can
form has, it'll
Yeah.
eventually become you, the you that was. I don't know.
which I think is a far more compelling plot than just let's Manchurian candidate people with robots.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, sort of, how about the endless loop of Will's father-in-law?
That was that was. Didn't I text you after watching that episode and be like, you should catch up
Yes,
because this episode
Yes,
is
you
the
did.
episode.
and it took me a couple days, but I finally understood why you said that.
Yeah. That was kind of That was what was that? That was episode 3. Riddle of the Sphinx
Yes.
or 4. I don't know.
Give one of those. 4, I think.
Since
4.
then, the episodes have been more entertaining because you have.
Well, you know where
Yeah.
you've got some stakes. You know where it's going instead of just Robot Rebellion.
Yeah.
If you want to bullshit Robot Rebellion, go watch Solo, and that's the worst part of that fucking movie. But we'll get into that when we do that episode.
But the one thing, and then we haven't even touched on the Ghost Nation and what the hell they are.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I don't know. I don't know. I usually have some sort of theory on these things. I've for some reason been content to just sit back and say, let's see what happens.
There's an idea that they're a neutral third party of hosts that don't want to hurt anybody, that don't want to hurt guests. They do that don't want to hurt guests and don't want to join the rebellion, basically.
Then what do they want?
I don't know. But
They seem to have...
the head of what appears to be the Ghost Nation is one of the original hosts that pitched the park to Will's brother-in-law.
Wait, really?
Yes.
How did I miss that?
If you watch back, it's the same actor who was with the Crown of Thorns.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, those two are two of the earliest hosts other than Dolores.
Oh. Okay, well... maybe I should go back and rewatch all of season 1. Again.
I know we're going off the rails
No,
here, but
go.
I kind of am worried at the stop-start of certain things. And maybe that's just the way you'll have scenes where they'll just be merciless to themselves and to humans. And then you'll have sad scenes where it's like they're in Sweetwater in the Mariposa, and the somewhat lobotomized Clem sees her replacement and is like aping what her role was, and it's sad, but you know what they're capable of, so you're kind of just like, stop starting me, stop investing me, and then immediately divesting me with certain things. Like Teddy's the only character that's had that arc fully so far. I mean, we'll see where he is now that he's just merciless and doesn't want to be still, which is a cool aspect of that you can up his aggression sliders and his down his timidity, but the core of who he is at this point as an awakened being is still not really on board with that to a degree.
Which gets into some very interesting philosophical conversations about.
But then you see that he's drowned in when they inevitably flood the whole park.
I think that was intentionally put there to make us say something like that.
Yeah.
Because that whole drowning has to do. It's got to be some sort of clever bait and switch to get them out of the park.
They play fast and loose with timelines in this series too.
Well, yeah.
You never know if you're looking at something that happened before. Like this whole thing that's happening now could be technically past. Certain aspects of it could have been stuff that happened before season 1, even if they really wanted to build something that way. But I don't know. It's still engaging to where you really want to see where it goes, but I don't know. It's 2 seasons into a 5-season run, and I just hope they're not going off the rails with certain things. But they feel like they're righting the ship where it comes to certain things. But like the Man in Black plot needs to be tightened up as far as where you want to go direction wise with that. Maybe as we say this, watch Sunday be an episode solely focused on him again.
I hope. Do you think they know?
Yes. Where they want to go with things? Yes.
With Man in Black.
Yeah. I think I think there's probably a degree of direction that a degree of leeway that you leave for certain characters if the performance is as good as his.
Well, I'm almost getting the feeling that they know that they need him for a future chapter, but they also need to just give the character something to do in the meantime. So
it's their way of shelving him, but keeping him,
keeping Ed Harris in the forefront, exactly, because he's fucking great.
It would make sense if it's another swerve of he thinking the maze was for him and then he thinking Glory is for him, and that being another. But 2 seasons in a row, you
fool me once,
yeah,
fool me twice.
But I don't know. I like his like love is just fed up with everything character, but he's like in his moment now where everything actually has consequences for him. And then immediately cinching up the whole, hey, your daughter's here. Yeah, I'm just gonna abandon her.
That was great.
Yes, yeah.
I was not expecting that. I was thinking, okay, something's going to happen where he's going to start leaving. Something tragic's going to happen, and it's going to force him right back in, even though he doesn't want to anymore.
Yeah.
No, he just says, fuck it, and leaves.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah, I've established that you're not a host here to taunt me. I don't need you to be here. Go get your own way out. I'm here for business. I'm here for things. Do we know what those are? No, but I'm gonna keep watching that character.
All right, one last question. What's his father-in-law's name? Why can't I think of it?
Jim Delos.
Jim Delos, thank you. So Jim Delos, they get to was it 149th try.
I believe so.
Yeah, 149th.
They never said how long they lasted, but it being the 139th iteration, it lasted a month and 7 days.
But they said some of the early ones only lasted a couple of days.
Yeah. Basically, the degradation was quick enough that they had him come in, do the fidelity test, and they were like, "Oh, right, it lasted this far."
So even if you average that out, that would be 80 months.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, a long time.
Yeah.
6, 7-ish years, give or take, if that's the average.
Yeah.
But he finally just says, no, you know what? Let's just watch him degrade. It could be useful. And then when they finally find him, right after that, none of the things that were going on, like the inability to keep his hands steady, or
none of the physical signs of the body rejecting, the body and mind rejecting its state.
It's almost like that trauma did the trick and worked, but too late for them to realize it.
Yeah.
Which is terrifying.
Yeah.
That is one of the most terrifying things I can think of. Just, okay, I finally gained consciousness after being dead and being resurrected, only to be trapped in this little room until some people burn me to death.
Yep.
And it's horrifying.
That was the turn in the series where you're just, they don't realize they cracked it. The tech was in there though.
For a while. And then everything went to shit.
Well, no, the Asian tech that was the most recent tech was dead in the room. So, like, you don't know if he was observing and reported something before going in, or if he was lured in because the body was apparently dead. That's hopefully something
unknown.
that gets
I hope that does get resolved.
Yeah,
that would be. It seems important.
Yeah.
It seems like what the show is actually about.
Yeah, is the realization that that whole transferring your consciousness totally worked. It's just a pain in the ass to get there.
Or that the entire moral of the show is that in order to fully self-actualize, you have to be subjected to gratuitous trauma.
Yeah.
That is the theme of our show, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
And on that note, I think we've talked about what we wanted to so far.
Yeah.
We will be back. This is just sort of off the 4 episodes left.
Yeah.
And I want to do a much bigger 2 or even 3-parter about that, because we've been talking about doing Blade Runner for a while. This and a couple of other things in recent years. You've seen Ex Machina, right?
No, I haven't watched it yet.
What the fuck? Yeah. Okay, that's your homework. Watch Ex Machina. It is only a top 5 sci-fi of this century.
Oh, in closing, patrician fans like Lee as far as the fan insert character, and idiots like the dumb girl who says shit all the time.
What?
Of the hey, we need to plot dump characters, Lee the writer is the more fun character than
okay.
Girl who somehow survived with a bucket and protein bars for about 14 weeks.
With perfect hair.
Yes, which makes you think she's a host and doesn't know it.
Everyone's a host.
Everybody.
You're a host.
That would be awesome.
If you see a turtle on its back in the desert.
Oh no! We're doing voice comps now.
Thanks for listening. We'll be back talking more about AI, Blade Runner, and
how horrible Google is getting.
Yeah, maybe.
Google talking, they're making hair appointments. Don't let this happen, people.
Thanks for listening. We'll be back soon.